Hey Internet, Harris here. As I switched away from computer science to more humanities-centric studies, I began using my iPad more and more often. For typing papers, to submitting papers, for taking notes whether with the Apple Pencil or the keyboard and trackpad, annotating and marking up documents and PDFs for class or personal usage, and of course for texting, FaceTiming, watching Netflix, YouTube, and more. But with yet another update to the iPad Pro lineup, do students need the Pro model, and do students need the 2021 M1 iPad Pro model? We're going to find out in this video presented by ESR Cases. So to make things simple, I'm pretty much going to say right away, this iPad is pretty much the same as the last two iPad Pros, plus the following few features. One, most importantly, is the new M1 processor, which has to do with speed and performance on this iPad. Secondly is the fact that the USB-C port on the bottom of this iPad is now Thunderbolt enabled, which expands its power and features. We're gonna skip number 3. Fourth, it now supports 5G cellular speeds. I guess we're also skipping 5 and 6. Seventh, it has a new ultra-wide front-facing camera and center stage feature. And finally, on the 12.9-inch option, you have the best looking display ever on an iPad. I'm going to go through each of those features from a student's perspective and let you know if those are worth buying. They're pretty expensive these days, and here's what you need to know. So the M1 processor came to the iPad, and if you haven't heard, this is basically Apple's own custom silicon, their own custom chip or processor that they're putting inside of their devices instead of relying on Intel or NVIDIA or Applied Materials or any of these other semiconductor manufacturers that you might see in other computers and other devices. So now we have an iMac with it, we have a MacBook Pro, we have a MacBook Air, and we have an iPad with the M1 processor. So M1 is definitely the biggest change to this iPad and one of the biggest leaps in performance ever. And it is so unbelievably fast and smooth on things that should bog it down a lot, but it just doesn't. It's just fast. But there's two caveats with that statement. First is that it's a pretty similar statement to what I can still make about other iPads, including this iPad that's helping me record this video right now, and this iPad over here that just died on me, actually, perfect timing, which is the iPad Air 4, and pretty much any other iPad out there within the past couple years. They're all just so well optimized, and I can do a lot of the similar tasks on all of these devices. They might not be quite as snappy, but in terms of the latest past couple years of the iPad Pro and the iPad Air that just died on me, they're really, really snappy. The second caveat is just the fact that most students won't even be using the most intensive applications that are available on the iPad, and the iPad doesn't even have the full suite of Pro apps that a lot of people want, such as Final Cut Pro or a full Xcode or Adobe Premiere or After Effects. You can get Photoshop, you can get iMovie, you can get Procreate and LumaFusion and different applications like this, but even those apps still don't really push the iPad to its limit, and the same goes for older iPads as well. So while the new iPad is just stupid powerful, a lot of that is going to remain in the theoretical cloud until Apple really changes the iPad and the apps that it can support, which isn't going to happen with iPadOS 15 outside of Swift. So if you make iPhone or iPad apps, the iPad Pro M1 might be for you, but I don't think many college students are actively making or developing iPhone and iPad applications, but if you are, well, that's a whole different video. Now, before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to ESR for sponsoring this video, and they make some of my favorite cases all time for the iPad Pro, ranging from super slim cases that magnetically attach to the back of your iPad and acts as if it's not even there. It's fantastic for throwing in a bag, to their more protective options, to their folios, to those that are completely transparent on the back. They've got a ton of really slim cases for the iPad. They have standard shell cases such as this completely transparent one, which will give you a lot of grip and a really simple design, or their folio options, which include magnetic protection on the front and different stand angles, whether you want to type with it or use the Apple Pencil. And you can get either a smooth matte texture or a leather finish, and you can also get screen protectors, whether it be tempered glass or paper-like finish. And you can check out the link in the description with my coupon code if you want 10% off your order. So go ahead and check out the code and the link below. Okay, second is USB-C is now Thunderbolt enabled. And if you don't know what that means, then it probably won't even matter to you. So USB-C on this iPad is great. And just like the iPad 2018, the iPad 2020, and the iPad Air 4, these all have USB-C, which means you can plug in the same type of adapters that you plug into your new Mac, or it means that you can charge your iPhone from your iPad with a USB-C to Lightning cable, or it means you can connect from a USB-C to HDMI cable right into a TV or monitor, stuff like that. This basically just means that you're able to connect more powerful, faster, greater bandwidth devices to your iPad. So you can connect Apple's Pro Display XDR monitor, which no student will do, or pretty much no student will ever do. It means you can connect Thunderbolt SSDs to your iPad. I'll do that for some of my video creation, and for that purpose, I will appreciate it. But because the Files app on the iPad is still so inconsistent, especially compared to Finder on the Mac, Thunderbolt on the iPad is great for certain people, but for the average student, it doesn't really matter. 4, 5G support. Awesome. I'm starting to finally realize the theoretical desirability of 5G, because in theory, you can download things super quickly when you want a file that you need to work with, a homework assignment, anything like that that you need to download really quickly, or FaceTime calls are so crystal clear over 5G when you have good 5G support like I have on my iPhone 12. So just like the iPhone 12 series phones, this does support 5G if your area and your carrier supports it. However, I've never had a cellular iPad. I don't really know that students will, especially because I have good Wi-Fi on campus, as well as being able to hotspot to my phone if I were to ever need to power on my iPad and use it with cellular. So because of that, and because I don't want to spend 130 extra bucks plus a monthly fee, 5G is a no-go for me and my usage, and probably for most other students as well. Next, the ultra wide camera and the center stage on the front. This is actually pretty cool. So now the front facing camera just has a super wide angle camera. It's kind of weird. It can make for some fun video projects, stuff like that. I give it that. And also for video calls, hopefully the days of Zoom are pretty much over, but you know, there obviously will always be video calls. And so this is really cool because it gives you the ability to basically track your movement within a frame. A couple weeks ago, I had a press call with Apple after an event, and I didn't realize that this was on, and so it like showed areas of my room that I hadn't prepared to be seen on the video call, so I turned it off. I'm like, this is kind of ironic that I'm turning off the brand new feature on a call with Apple. It's cool to have as a student. I don't know if it particularly helps that much, but if you're in like a cramped dorm room and you don't want to, I guess, move your iPad around too much, it's cool. And finally, if you buy the more expensive 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which I think is a good option if you're trying to replace a laptop, the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is huge and just really fun to use. I personally stick to the more portable and compact 11-inch version. But if you get the most expensive iPad Pro, the 12.9, you're going to get a display that is unlike any display in history. It's awesome, it's beautiful. However, I probably couldn't even tell the difference between the quality of that display and the quality of this display or an older display, because they're all just so good. I can't even personally tell the difference, and it's really going to take someone who's super into color correction or photography or videography to be able to tell the difference. Again, average student, not a big difference. So my final conclusions. The iPad Pro is truthfully, and Apple's not gonna like hearing this, it's been a boring couple years of updates. Basically, in the past couple years, we've gotten things such as a LiDAR scanner on the back for depth sensing, which is cool if you're studying in a major that allows you to take advantage of that. If your major has particular apps such as anatomy that allows you kind of project a skeleton out in front of you and interact with it. I think most majors probably don't have apps yet that support using the LiDAR sensor on the back. And a wide angle camera, it's nice, I hardly use it. The new microphones on the iPad Pro since last year that are like studio quality microphones, that's really nice for a run and gun voiceover. Don't use it too often. The performance gains, obviously nice. Outside of that, it's a very similar iPad to what we got 3 years ago. And so I find it hard to recommend this unless you're just looking for something this year that's just the best, that's gonna last you several years, or unless you specifically know you're gonna take advantage of the M1 processor or the Thunderbolt port or 5G, and you have the money, or your parents have the money to pay for it, that's an option. But I think for most people, this iPad is so great, but so is last year's, and so is the one from 3 years ago. Save some money, go refurbished, buy your Apple Pencil and your Logitech keyboard or your Apple keyboard to type up documents, whatever you need to do. I think that there are cheaper and more practical options for a lot of students. But if you're looking for just the latest and greatest, this is the latest and it is the greatest, and it is really great. It's a really great experience, and I love using the iPad as a student for reading on Kindle, for taking notes in class, for editing occasional video, and working on Photoshop, and even using this as a second display for my Mac. I really do enjoy using the iPad as a student. And if you want to check out how I use my iPad as a student, I have tons of videos covering that, which I'll leave linked down below. But thanks for watching, and make sure to check out ESR cases.